First of all, it's not crazy, it's fantastic. Right. My name is Stuart Langridge. Good morning. And I'm going to talk about cross-platform mobile app development. I build apps a lot. Can you guys see this?
Not really. Not what you're ready for.
Am I allowed to move this around?
Yes. Causing some problems.
I've got to broken the whole vibe of the thing.
Do you want to go wireless? Make the life easier.
Yes, you do. Thanks. Yes. Yeah, that's on.
Yeah.
Turn that right now.
Yeah.
Hello. Now this works. Now that he's turned it down to like minus nuclear level or whatever. Right, there you go.
So,
Alright, how's it going?
Have you turned it off?
hello. Yay! Your technology, it fails. Right, so I'm going to talk about building apps, but I build apps a lot. How many of you have a mobile phone? That was a really easy shot, to be honest with you. How many of you have downloaded apps for your phone? Yeah, that makes sense. How many of you built an app for a phone? Really?
Yes, really.
Why are you here watching me talk about it? You know about this stuff. Anyway, the important point about building applications is that I'm an Ubuntu user. Any Ubuntu users in the house?
Yay.
Yeah, that makes sense. My designer's a Mac user. Any Mac users in the house?
Yay.
Get out.
Hi guys. Hi everybody.
One person going, me, and everyone else like, shut up, shut up, shut up. And for mobile phones, I've got an iPhone. Any iPhone users?
Yay. No.
Quietly again. Sorry. Android for the Nexus 4. Any Android people? And I've got a Firefox phone. Any Firefox users?
No.
Any Firefox users who don't work for Mozilla? So, I want stuff to work on all the platforms because I'm running all the platforms. And realistically, those that are not somebody, is any BlackBerry users?
I have
That's a good thing because I was about to say I don't care about your platforms.
I thought you said it was cross-platform.
Not that cross. BlackBerry just makes me cross, not the same thing. So we sat down, myself and my designer, we designed a game called Riddling. Has anyone played my game?
Yes.
Has anyone finished my game?
We hate you.
It is, I have to say, quite hard. But it's designed that way. So we sat down and we decided to start with Riddling, basically because it's quite a simple game. If you haven't played it, cryogenics.org/Riddling, and it's available for Android, for Ubuntu phones, it's available for iPhones, it's available for Firefox OS. So you can give it a go, play it, see how you get on. It is quite hard, as I say. But what I'm going to talk about here is what we decided to do, the ways we decided to do it, and why we decided to do it that way. The first thing, to be honest with you, if you're going to build something which exists on all of those platforms, something already exists which does, the web browser, right? So that technology exists everywhere already. This is a useful thing to bear in mind. The other point is that Riddling is a very simple application. Those of you who've played it will know. Those of you who haven't played it but will play it after this talk will soon find out. It's not that complicated. Basically, you get asked a question and you type an answer in. Call for duty, it is not. So, it looks like that, right? So you have a clue and you have a box to type the answer in and you have a button to press to see whether you got it right or not. So, this sort of thing is, you'll hear a whole bunch of people when you talk about mobile app development say, well, you can't use web technology because it's all slow and rubbish and everything, but seriously, it's a button, right? It's not hard. Riddling doesn't do anything very complicated. So part of the reason we started with it is because we were trying to get a sense of how you develop for multiple platforms. And part of the of gold here. Those of you who are scientists will know you keep everything simple the first time you're doing it. So we picked Riddling at least partially because it doesn't need to read your address book, or it doesn't need to sign in, and it doesn't need to use Game Center or whatever. It's just a nice, simple game. Even native people like that idea. So we decided to use web technology because it's available on all platforms, and because this is relatively simple, it gives us the opportunity to bring that to everything. But we still wanted the games in the app stores. Right? We could have just put it on the web, and I'll get onto that later. But we wanted the game to appear in a place where when we say someone hears the name, they could go to the Firefox Marketplace, or go to the Google Play Store, or go to the Apple App Store and buy it. So how many of you have heard of a thing called PhoneGap? How many of you have not heard of a thing called PhoneGap? About half and half. So if you listen very carefully, you can hear an Adobe person in marketing crying their eyes out. Half of you haven't heard of it. What PhoneGap does is, if you build essentially a web application, a local web app running with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it lets you bundle it up into a native app wrapper. So you get a thing which looks, which is a native application which you can upload to mobile app stores, but it's just basically a web browser without an address bar. So it gives you the chance to use web technologies to build something, but not, and then to make it a native app on every platform. So you get it in the app store, so you get discovery, so you can charge money for it. And it's a jolly convenient way to be terribly cross-platform. Precisely because you build the app once, and then you poke PhoneGap into it, and then it's available for each of the platforms. So in theory, for complicated reasons, the PhoneGap project is actually called Cordova, which is a city in Argentina, if I remember rightly. And in theory, you download Cordova, and then you type Cordova create and then project name. And then Cordova builds it for a specific platform, Cordova runs it, and that's all you have to do. So all you've got to do now is just do that, and you've got an app which runs on every platform in the world, right? No. Not quite that easy. So first thing, talk about building the application. If you are, reasonable portion of you are Linux users, yes? If you're using Cordova on Linux, you can, I mean, I've got the Ubuntu logo because I don't care about Fedora, but this guy down here does. If you are a Linux user, you can use PhoneGap on your Linux machine and build Android applications. Not a problem, that works perfectly well. But that's because the Android SDK is itself supported on Linux. PhoneGap doesn't magically know how to build Android applications, it uses the existing Android tools to do it. It does exactly the same thing with other apps. So, if you use PhoneGap on Ubuntu or PhoneGap on Linux, you can't build iOS apps because we haven't got the iOS toolchain. You need Xcode for that. Well, for Xcode you need a Mac because it's important to Apple that if you want to build something for their phone, you also have to buy a laptop from them for 1,500 quid. Now, I personally consider this to be unfair and possibly illegal, but there you go. You also can't build for a bunch of other platforms. So if anyone got a Windows phone?
At the moment. I'm still waiting on the Ubuntu phone. I'm holding out hope and I've given up on Android.
I was going to say one guy, but I should say the one guy.
That's my name.
Congratulations, right?
Did you buy it?
Yeah, it was 50 quid, it was dirt cheap.
What were the odds? Yeah, so if you want to build a Windows Phone app, PhoneGap supports Windows Phone, but you can't build Windows Phone apps on Linux, because again, we haven't got the tool chain. You need... Don't sit there like, oh, maybe you can now. It would be nice that you could do, but in practice, the Windows Phone people have taken roughly the same approach that Apple did, that they've only made the tools available for their operating system. So realistically, to build Windows Phone applications, you need Windows. Which puts you out of luck. You think, hooray, I can build cross-platform apps, and you think, but I can't actually build them for half the platforms because I don't have the tool chain. And then the PhoneGap project, after they got bought by Adobe, came up with a thing called PhoneGap Build, where what you do is you take your HTML and CSS and JavaScript, stick them in a zip file, and upload it to their server, and they build the application for you, presumably somewhere in the cloud, they've got a Windows machine and a Mac. You know, someone's Mac will get plugged into the cloud in some way. Presumably with quite a long cable. I don't really know how this works, right? Ask a network engineer. And then that builds, so they'll have a Mac there somewhere. Maybe it's Mac OS X server, they can be the only user of it. And that builds your PhoneGap app as an iOS app using the Apple toolchain, and then lets you download the file. So you know, for Android you get an APK, for iPhone you get an IPA, same kind of thing. So the PhoneGap build project concept works fantastically. Totally happy because it means that now I, as an Ubuntu user, can build applications for everything the PhoneGap supports. It's not quite that easy. There are platforms which PhoneGap supports, which PhoneGap build doesn't. And PhoneGap itself, being an open source project and developed very much in the open and by a collaborative team, tends to support some platforms better than others. But in practice, you can do a pretty good hit around across most of the stuff that you want to do by using PhoneGap. So, in addition to a lot of the smaller stuff, I need to talk about little things to do with your app that come up when you are cross-platform developing that wouldn't do otherwise. So, the first one is mute. Riddling, as a game where, you know, as I say, not a particularly complicated graphical game. You type in an answer and you press a button, it tells you whether you got it right or you got it wrong. If you got it wrong, it plays a little sad noise. The problem is that nobody realises that it plays a sad noise until, it's quite a quiet sad noise. Nobody realises that it does that until they're playing it under the table in a meeting. And then it goes, and I released the game, and within 2 days I had that bug report in almost exactly those words 9 times. Gratifying to find out that everyone's playing my game instead of working. So, you remember the crash? That was my fault. But the important point it brought up is that people said, well, we need a way of muting the sound. Which I honestly hadn't thought of it. It hadn't even crossed my mind. And you get this. So how many of you have used an iPhone? It has, one of the interesting things I have discovered about the glorious shiny iPhone, it has 2 volumes. It has one for the ringer and one for media. Right? So, which is in theory quite a good idea. I suspect Android does as well. In that you want to be able to turn down the volume of videos but not have it shut your actual phone up. Right? Good idea. But if you're in the riddling game and you turn the volume down, no sound is playing, so it assumes you're turning the ringer down. So, I got this bug report saying, how do I turn the sound down? And I went, oh, I don't know. Because we don't want the fact that you have riddling up to mean you can only adjust the media volume. Yes? But it doesn't play background music. So most of the music isn't playing. Now, if you deliberately get the answer wrong, have it play the sound, and while it's playing the sound, turn the volume down, it turns the right volume down. But that's obviously stupid. So after going backwards and forwards with people a bunch of times and spending a bunch of time A, drinking and B, blaming Apple for being rubbish, it was, well, how are you going to fix it? So I just put a mute button in the app. I feel terribly guilty about this. But the app itself, Riddling itself, now has a mute button at the top of the, on the toolbar at the top. And admittedly, that's a rubbish solution, but it's something that I just didn't think of. And you've got to think about that sort of thing. Android seems to work okay. If you turn the volume down, it seems to turn the right one down. I don't quite understand to this day why it works on one platform and doesn't work on another. But it's that kind of tricky little thing that means that the first thing you have to do is test across loads of different platforms. How many of you are web people, would you say? How many of you web people have heard of the local Peter Paul Koch, PPK?
What's that?
Peter Paul Koch. No, he is, yay! That's what I'm Jamie. He's a guy who he spent a long time building a site called Quirks Mode, which, again, he will be very sad. And he's like quite a menacing guy with massive hair. right? But he spent, I'd say, he spent a long time documenting the quirks and trials and tribulations in different browsers. And one of the things that he put out, his most recent blog post, was only 2 or 3 days ago, said that if you're doing web development, do you test in Android Chrome? Yes? No? Those of you who do web development? Do you test in all 9 versions of Android Chrome? And importantly, this is not version 37, version 36. These are all version 37. They're just 9 different versions from different manufacturers, all of whom patch Chrome differently. And that's one browser on one platform, right? So the whole problem with doing cross-platform development in general is you have to test everywhere. You sort of think, well, you know, I'll develop it, I'll test it here, and it'll work everywhere, and it just doesn't. Excuse me, sorry. So the next thing I'll think about is keyboard size. So there's a Riggling user interface again, and when you tap in the little text box, the keyboard comes up. But obviously, you don't want the keyboard to overlap the go button. So how tall is the keyboard on the phone this is running on? Is there a way to ask the phone how tall your keyboard is? Answer, no. If you are in, this is a web development thing, but if you're in Chrome and the keyboard comes up, Chrome treats the page as only being the height that remains. It shrinks the page. iOS Safari does not. Sorry, dry throat. So that's really tricky, and the way I solved it is professionally by saying if you're on an iPhone, the keyboard is 425 pixels on which I was going to say. Do you have any questions?
Just to point out that the iOS 8 with the advanced keyboards, you could be, your keyboard size could change from moment to moment depending on what the user likely does.
And importantly,
Can you repeat the question?
sorry,
That's
yes.
the question, but anyway.
Yes, and the point that was made was that iOS 8 now does custom keyboards, which Android has done forever and ever and ever. Now, the sizes of custom keyboards tend not to change very much. I don't believe Apple will let you say, hey, custom keyboard, which is the size of the screen. But if you think, certainly for iOS 8, you get the keyboard now, but you also get suggestions at the top. You know the thing that Android's done for years and years and years, the word suggestions. iOS 8 now does it, which means that when I said, if you want an iPhone, hard-code the keyboard to be 425 pixels, it's now taller. So that's already broken, and I am being punished by instant karma for doing it. But that's the thing, you know. Web fonts, this is another brilliant one. If you're a web developer and you're using web technology, you can, instead of bundling fonts with your application, you can use them from somewhere else on the internet. This has a bunch of useful benefits, like you can use fonts which you're not allowed to distribute. So people can offer a font, which you're then allowed to use in your application by linking to it live on the internet, but you couldn't download that font file and stick it in your app because you're not allowed to, because there are licenses on these things. So I use a bunch of web fonts for Riggling because, I mean, me, I don't care. Type your own for everything. My designer is really, really, really serious about typography. So we spent a bunch of time going backwards and forwards which fonts to use. I said, if you can pick any of these that don't cost actually money to license, I'm not paying until the end of time, just so you can have the curves or the A's be different. But I'm prepared to use a different font because you want it, no problem. So we started using web font, and then I discovered that if you download the app, and then you start it up, but you don't have an internet connection, none of the text loads. And since, I mean, you see from the game, it's nothing but text, a grey bar. So that was a problem. And it's a problem which I've still not quite resolved. But we will do. But that sort of thing, this is the crossover between, hey, this is web technology, great, because one of the things about being a web page is you can reasonably assume that people have access to the internet, because otherwise they couldn't see your package, right? This is changing now as we look at sort of offline first and things like that. People are going to need to start thinking about this sort of thing more and more. But if you combine the fact that you are on an app and therefore not necessarily on the internet, with web browsers psychotically bad handling of fonts, it occasionally breaks you, which is what happened here. There was a question, sorry.
Yes, with CSS you can cascade the fonts.
You can. The problem, the point was with CSS you can cascade the fonts. You can name a font and then name the next one and name the next one. And if it genuinely doesn't have the font at the top of the stack, then you're fine. If it's still trying to fetch the fonts at the top of the stack, instead of falling down to the second one, it just hangs with no text until it's downloaded. If you're on a tube train, it never downloads. So, no text for you. At which point, we'll start up your app and say, I thought you said your app was hard, it's just a grey box. Which looks less than professional, right?
Is that the same on all browsers?
Is that the same on all browsers?
It depends how old. If you're an old enough browser you don't support web fonts at all, then you'll just fall through as if those fonts weren't there, and then you'll get the Times New Roman version, which works fine actually. Hooray, fallback. The problem is the same that it's always been. If you want to show an image, and the browser doesn't have the image cached, and it needs to fetch it from the internet, and the internet is slow, it will take a while before that image shows up. The thing that's different about fonts is that if you haven't got the font, none of your text shows, and that's, in theory, most of your images aren't critical. Having some text at all tends to be a bit more useful, especially if your game is now about text. Question?
You don't have a, hold on a sec, Mike's coming in.
All of your web fonts in a microphone.
So you could put all of your web fonts that are online in a CSS file that is also online as overrides to default styles. So that means that if you've got no connection, it can't download a CSS file that has references to things that are also online.
I agree with you. Wow, that sounds complicated. At that point I'm going to go, you know what, just pick a different font and I'll bundle it. The hell with it. Right? You don't get that one, Mike. But realistically, they are still very small. And so if you're thinking about money, which is only useful in aggregate, then it's important to think more between, I'm a lot more guided by the payment stuff on Android and iOS to the exclusion of others than I am by the technology stuff. If doing a technology thing, if it broke it on Firefox OS, it would be a problem. Doing a payment method, if it broke it on Firefox OS so I could get paid for it, I'd be like, oh, well, you know, maybe give it away for free or something. Which is why the Ubuntu Touch version is free. Because there isn't any way to get paid there. And I didn't want to put ads in, because as far as I can tell, I'd be the first and only app to have ads in the store, right?
No.
Oh, there are some now, are there?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We've only got 500 apps, so I've got ads in?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay. But there is no way to get paid on Ubuntu Touch yet. There is a way to get paid on Firefox, and I have attempted to implement it, but it seems hilarious.
Yeah.
So, what we did was we put adverts in the Android version, and we made the iOS version for pay. 69p, I think, or £1, something like that. I forget whatever the cheapest thing was anyway. And that is the money, the graph. There along the bottom is time, so that's months since the game came out. And then you said, you know, there was a spike at the beginning, and then it dropped off, and then it went back up again. But in general, it's been pretty constant, the ad revenue on Android, which is interesting. It means that people are continuing to play the game, and the money's staying roughly where it is the whole time, which is a really useful fact. So is that a question?
I haven't tried your game, but I'm not going to try it now. I'm an Android user, and I won't have anything that has ads in it. I'd much rather pay for it.
We'll get to it. Hang on. I think you'd be surprised, but give me a couple of slides. Sorry, another question.
Yes, it seems to me if you're selling advertising space, you're going to have to go through quite a lot of effort to acquire advertisers. So how does that?
In practice, you do not, because I don't go and find advertisers. I just sign up with someone who finds advertisers for me, and then they take 10% of the money. That's what Google AdSense do. That's what InMobi do. That's what ad exchanges in general do. That's like saying if I'm going to get a car, I have to go to a lot of effort to source individual tyres and rims and steering wheels and stuff, which I would do if I got it myself, but I don't. I go to someone else and pay them a premium for doing it for me, and ads are exactly the same. In practice, if you want ads, you just go and sign up with an ad company. Say, here are my bank details, and they go, okay, here is some JavaScript code, and putting ads in is their problem. So that's it. That's not difficult. Right. So that's the Android graph, reasonably constant. That's the iPhone graph.
Wow.
released at the beginning, and lots of people bought the game, and then it dropped off an awful lot towards the end. Many fewer people were buying it. You know, so it gets a big fillip at the beginning. And some of that, I think, and this is quite speculative, and I'd be interested in thoughts, but some of that is that ads keep going while you're playing the game, which means that, whereas the money only comes in when someone buys it. So anyone who bought the game 4 months ago and still hasn't finished it, anyone? He's still showing the ads, but isn't paying any more than money. You see what I mean?
How often have you released a new version of it?
Say that again?
How often do you release a new version?
I've released one new version since it came out.
So that's yeah. Every time you release a new version, you give people the opportunity to share with others.
Yeah, but releasing a new version because it gives you that opportunity is the devil itself.
But also money.
I'll get to that, because this graph is actually a lie. What the graph actually looks like is that. Right? So that bar that you saw in the first one, which is that much higher than these others, is actually, this is a tiny bar, and the second month is where all the stuff came, because we got in the New York Times.
Wow.
Which jumped the numbers up a bit. And that really brought home to me the point that one little thing like this, and seriously, this here is not an excerpt from their write-up, it is their write-up. Not the longest thing, and it was at the bottom of a column, but it actually been in the newspaper. I have the newspaper in my house. I'm like, yeah, look, New York Times. My daughter was quite impressed. And they wrote that, and seriously, I didn't actually run the numbers for this talk, I didn't write them down. Just over 90%, I think, of our sales came within a week of that article coming out. Which suggests to me, not being a marketing person or particularly experienced in this stuff, that if you would like your thing to be successful, getting it mentioned in a world-famous newspaper is not a bad way of doing it. However, I'll get to that. So, there's my graph for Apple. There's my graph for Android. The interesting thing is, I said the y-axis was time, the x-axis is money, but they're not on the same scale, these two graphs. So the Apple ones, we've made about 1,200 quid on the app, which is quite nice, you know. I mean, it was never designed to be something which was paying anyone's wages. Myself and Mike sat down and did it. It was fun. We did it primarily to learn about cross-platform app development in general and learn about using PhoneGap and about PhoneGap Build and all the problems we have with fonts and everything. And it served its purpose. But also, 1,200 quid free money, hooray. The ads, $5.67.
In total for everything.
In total. That whole graph, this graph here, every month, nice and constant. It is nice and constant, it's just a nice and constant 0.13p. Right? And this is why I'm not that worried about the chap who said, I'm not going to get you again because it's got ads. Because I hate ads more than you do. So the ad is one tiny little banner ad which appears behind the keyboard almost all the time. Because I did think, well, you know what I could do? I can have an ad, and then every time you get a question mark, it shows you an ad. And then I thought, what would I think of such a ad? And my thoughts were not kind. So I thought, I'm not going to do that. And the problem was, I said, yeah, we're going to monetize it with ads. And what I meant was, I'm going to put an ad in so I could say I'm monetizing ads, but make it the least obtrusive ad you've ever seen in your life. So while the keyboard's up, which is almost all the time, the ad's behind the keyboard. So if you drop the keyboard down, you can see the ad. So amazingly enough, there are any advertisers or SEO people in the audience or anything, amazingly enough, my ad click-through rates are not high.
Did they change
Did they change?
from before as well?
From before?
So were the adverts always behind the keyboard?
Yes, the adverts were always there. Basically, I treated it as though there were two of me. There was Boss Me, who said, we must monetize this game with ads, monetize it developer, and Developer Me, who went, right, okay, I've been ordered to do this, so I will do, but I'm going to do it in as work-shy a way as possible, because I don't like ads and I protect the users. So, user, you are protected. I really don't think you'll find the ads obtrusive. In fact, I'm prepared to bet a fiver that you won't even notice they're there at all, which is why I haven't made a great deal of money.
You're only going to make 17p profit if you lose that bet.
This is my point, right? So the ads in total, if you ignore the fact, of the payments money, half of it went to my designer, and half of it went to me, just down the middle. I haven't actually told you about the ad money for two reasons. First of all, $2, whatever. And secondly, as far as I can tell, I don't actually get paid by the ad company until my account clears $100, which, as far as I can have, which, as far as I'm aware, will happen 352 years from now. So, I'm quite prepared to believe, having watched people play reading, there will be still some people stuck on question 24 352 years from now. But ads doing it the way I'm doing it, I'm not a money spinner. However, how many of you played Flappy Bird? Those of you who didn't, it was a very simple and spectacularly annoying game. But lots of people played it. It got incredibly popular. And they showed you ads all the time. Every time you failed a level, which was about once every 4 seconds, not even joking, it would show you an ad, and then you'd have to wait a couple of seconds to go through. And apparently, the chap who was doing it, it got popular enough that he was making $50,000 a day in ad revenue. And he walked away from it. He walked away with a dump truck full of money because people were so frustrated by his little game, they started giving him death threats on Twitter, right? Which is completely unacceptable. It's like, seriously, it's a game. What's wrong with you people? And the guy walked away from enough money to fill the room to get away from that kind of culture, which is worrying. But nonetheless, because you can make a ton of money out of ads.
He later came back.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh, fair play to him then. Dump truck full of money. I mean, you could be happy with half a dump truck full of money and give the money to some deserving ginger person.
You can buy a lot of personal security as well if you've got the death threat still going on.
Well, yeah. And yeah, as I mentioned, this kind of payments approach, which clearly works, I feel a bit uneasy about making people pay for stuff up front. Think about testing it. The problem is, if you're genuinely offline, the browser knows not to go and fetch. So if you're actually in a tube tunnel, it's when you're say on stage in Oxford in a hotel with crap Wi-Fi or something, hypothetically, that you get this kind of problem. But yes, your point is well taken. The next thing is, I wanted to make the game open source for two reasons. First of all, it is the right thing to do. Yes, it is. And secondly, if you don't make it open source, PhoneGap Build charge you £10 a month. But it's the first reason that's important, right? However, there is a problem with this. The game is a thing where it offers you clues to questions and then makes you type an answer in. It's quite hard to make that sort of game open source because there are some people, perhaps in this very room, who would think, this question's quite hard, maybe I'll just go and look on GitHub for the answer. Right? Real people won't do that. Everyone here will. So how do you solve that problem?
Hash the answers.
Very good.
Which is why it's case sensitive, I assume.
Which is why it's case sensitive. And what Mark just said is exactly what I did do. You hash the answers and then you compare what they typed in with the hash of the answer, which is how password logging in works. And it's precisely that done that way in order that people here like Mark Johnson can't just go and read the answers directly out of the source. And it works brilliantly. It means that technically, the source I publish is not the whole source for the game, because it's missing one file which is all the unhashed answers, and then my little script hashes them all to make the thing which is distributed. But as far as I'm aware, that's allowed. And if the FSF think, no, you have to just give the answers away, then the hell with open source, and I'll pay the £10 a month. But yes, that works fine. As Mark points out, the answers are case sensitive because of that, but in Riddling 2, if I ever build it, I'll just knock everything down to lowercase first. Because if you're looking for things that people complained about, behind the fact that it gave them away in meetings, the answers being case sensitive is pretty high on it. Lots of people in the audience who've played the game go, yeah, bloody case sensitivity. Yes, I know, sorry. Next thing, British imperialism. So, how many of you in this room would consider yourself British? How many people in this room would consider yourselves not British? Right, so only not British people get to play this game. It's like being in the EU. Right. So, non-British people, British people all shut up, right? Say nothing. Non-British people, the way riddling works is you get a clue for a particular level. And then from that, you have to guess what the clue would be for the next level. Yeah? So, for level 4, the clue would be a boy. So you're looking for the corresponding version for number 5. So there's something where a boy is the 4th thing in the sequence, and you want number 5. Right, British people say nothing. Anyone outside Britain have a clue how it works? No? British people, what's the answer? Why is it silver? Right. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy, 5 for silver, 6 for gold, 7 for a secret never to be told. The magpie line, right? And I put that in the first version of the game, and I played this on a few people. Alan Pound. Got it, not a problem, not a worry. Released the game, and I got a bunch of irate Americans, again, what we got, saying, what the hell? And this was clue number 4, right? It's not the end of the game. You got the first 3, which is designed to teach you like what order numbers are in. And then this one, and no one who isn't British knows the magpie rhyme. I didn't know this, because I'm a horrible imperialist English buzz. But again, it's that kind of thing, which surprised me. I mean, that's not really about cross-platform app development, that's about cross-country app development. But in practice, much as I would like to say, hey, this is only available to British people, again, it's like the EU, right? Not a Tory. Doesn't do that. I would like everyone to be able to play it. I would like people in America to be able to play it, at least partially because there are more of them and they have all the money. And because of that, precisely because of that, it's important that you make sure that your game isn't massively culturally specific. Apparently it's okay if your game is massively culturally specific because you're playing an American Marine shooting non-Americans, but that doesn't work for us, we're not as big a deal. Magpies, that's magpie. So, there then comes a question, why do you build an app at all? I said right at the beginning, why using web technology? Because the web's available on all the platforms. But why does it even need to be an app? Why is it not just on the web? So instead of using web technologies, just use the web itself. Why isn't Wriggling just a website? And that's a reasonable argument, I have to say. I've got a thing called SoonSnap. Anyone heard of SoonSnap? Yeah, a couple of people who actually know me or hassle about it. And what SoonSnap does, it came about because I was in a pub on Friday night, which is unusual for me. Seriously? True. Those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, that's unusual for me. Being in a pub on Friday night. I was walking past a group of people, and they said, "Take a photo of us." And I'm like, having a beer. Seriously. And moaning about music on Twitter. And I said, okay, but no one handed me a phone or anything. So I took a picture with my own phone. Just whipped the phone out of my pocket, because I didn't think about it. Took a picture. But then if you're in that position, you've taken a picture of them, but they would like the picture. How do you get it to them? Suggestions? Yeah, NFC. Right? The actual people are not getting. A suggestion is that I pay less attention to them on that count. That's paraphrasing what you said, yes. And again, I like the idea of building things which are able to everybody. And so, you can't realistically come up with a single platform solution. This is cross-platform stuff, right? So, how do you get a photo? How do you get a photo from your phone of arbitrary design to their phone of arbitrary design? So someone says to me, take a picture of me in a pub, and then you want to send them a picture, and you have to ask for their email address. You don't know who they are. That's a bit personal, right? And to be honest with you, for some people it might be okay. If someone was sitting in a pub and I said, "Could I have your email address?" that might be construed as a bit creepy. So
But photographing them isn't creepy.
They asked me to photograph them, right? I'm not waiting in the bushes outside their flat. They take a photo of me.
What's wrong with 4chan?
I'm not going to answer the question of what's wrong with 4chan. So, yeah, I mean, Bluetooth in theory works. How many of you've all got mobile phones, how many of you got Bluetooth turned on all the time? Wow. 2 people. So, you're standing in a pub, there's a bunch of loud music, these are non-technical people, and you have to talk them through turning on Bluetooth on a phone you've never used.
You already said it's an iPhone, though. It's easy.
I said it might be an iPhone.
Well, they're real people. Of course it's an iPhone.
You live somewhere posh or not? Well, I mean, I'm sure in Chelsea it's like that. But yes, the point is that you don't know. So my idea was, I built SoonSnap. And what you do with that is, I take a picture, and then I go to soonsnap.com and say, upload the picture. Now, I know what I'm doing because I'm techie. And then it puts the instructions on my screen which says, tell them, go to soonsnap.com, type in this code.